This is the June 10th, 2022 meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee, called to order. Lois, do we have a quorum?
I am not exactly sure, honestly. Hold on. Some of my computer's freezing up on me.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that. We'll if ever we don't have a quorum, it'll be just an informal meeting, but we'll begin in any case as you do the calculation. Let me see if I can share screens now. So I'm hoping that you can see the agenda. So the agenda is approval of minutes of the May 6th meeting, which I'll come to in a second. Co-chair for universities report, co-chair for community colleges report, the Faculty Advisory Committee Fall 2022 conference, other issues. And I suspect we'll deal with most of our issues during the course of the reports. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
Excuse me, David, you can't call for a motion until you have a quorum.
Okay.
Actually,
We'll wait for Lois.
I'm sorry, my computer's freezing up. This might take a few minutes.
So I see large, medium, and small. I see Swope and Charter Oak. But in terms of the universities, I believe we only have Central. Is that correct?
I've lost the list of participants when I went to share. Let me.
I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, so we have community colleges, Charter Oak, and Swope. We're missing university faculty for a couple of colleges, but that still gives us that would give us 6 or 10. Oh, and there's Ratua. We're good.
Okay, so we have a quorum, in which case I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda for the meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? That's approved. Let's go on to the minutes of the last meeting. And I hope again that you can see it there. I also sent it as an attachment on an email previously. So I'll just scroll through it. Are there any adjustments to make to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Fran, thank you. Is there those in favor? Say aye, please.
Aye.
That'll do it. Those opposed? Approved. Okay, so let's go on to the reports. And let me just see with this new interface if I can change. Oh, just 1 second because I've lost my ability. Good grief. I see it's a sharing. Okay. Stop sharing, and I'm going to share now a PowerPoint. Okay, can you see Finance Committee report? Again, strangely enough, I can't see what I display. I don't know if that's a.
We can see it.
Okay. So we had a fairly complete report on the FY 21-22 year. I'll make this available to everybody. It's a little hard to read, and I'm sure you're not going to want to look at all the details. That said, you'll see in the right-hand column, I've just given you the total. The total of expenditures for the 4 CSUs, including the system office, is $760.5 million. The system office for the CSUs, that's to say the portion of the system office on Woodland Street, which has been apportioned to matters related to the CSUs, is $12.2 million, and that's 1.6% of the total. The total expenditures for the 12 community colleges plus various other central structures is $527.8 million. Of that, the system office for the Connecticut Community College, that is to say, the unconsolidated part of the community colleges, i.e. directly to one of the 12 or more of the 12 community colleges, is $6.3 million. Shared services is $22.7 million. And that's all the positions that you've seen posted in those weekly announcements. And CSCC, which is Connecticut State Community College, is the so far unaccredited one community college, is $14.2 million. So that gives a subtotal of $43.2 million for central structures of the community college system, or 8.1%. You can compare that to the 1.6% for the CSUs. The grand total then is $1.3 billion. And I think it's always interesting to see how much money goes into the Connecticut State colleges and university system, of which the CSUs account for 58.5% at 760, the community colleges 40.6% at 527, and COSC, that's our colleagues at Charter Oak State College, 19.9 million or 1.5%. I'm going to skip this one. It's more of the same. This is from the report from one of the people at the system office, and I've just retained this one because it shows a little bit the proportions where the revenues come from. And you can see for the state universities, now the number here is smaller because that's the total of revenues. Well, that's tuition and fees, which is 38%. The state support is 52%. If we look over here at the community colleges, the calculation of state support is 73%. And if we look over here at Charter Oak, state support is 45%. As you can see, tuition and fees are one of the two major areas. And then there's other sources. For the universities, that's largely the residences and food services. And it does include as well a small amount of research monies. They haven't broken that out, which comes into the universities. For the community colleges, as you can see, other sources is in fact next to zero. And for Charter Oak, it's not clear what it is, but it's 2%. Interesting items. So I'm just going to draw your attention to the deficit questions. Which are the institutions or sectors which are in deficit, which are, and there are three. The first one is the community college deficit. And this is a quote from page 49 of the Finance Committee report. Total FY23 expenditures are proposed to increase by 88 million or 17% over FY22. Now, adjusting for costs related to the CBAC agreement, that is to say, the salary increases, the 27th payroll, right, which happens once every 11 years, and the increase in financial aid set aside, which was determined at the last board meeting when fees and tuition were increased. The increase in spending over FY22 is 5.1 million or 1%. Maybe that's not, I'll call this an interesting item. It's not quite a deficit. But I did ask the question at the Finance Committee meeting, why, if Students First was supposed to save money and reduce expenses, that expenditures had in fact increased by 5.1 million. And the answer, which I did not consider fully satisfactory, was that this is replacing people who are retiring. But that actually should result in savings, not an increase. So I'm not sure that that's the correct answer. The other point, of course, is that the costs for the Connecticut State Community College, the executive, will increase considerably with the hiring of the 6 deans, the 12 associate deans, and I'm told as well 2 assistant deans. For Charter Oak, this was unusual. There is a small deficit reported of $1.2 million, which is being taken out of their reserves, which are still positive. This reflects non-recurring expenses, according to the document, related to academic program development, coupled with a somewhat less favorable final distribution of state assistance across CSCU mandated by the state budget. So there was some perhaps miscalculation as to the amount that Charter Oak was eligible to receive from state supplementary funds during the pandemic. Of course, the main problem, and Ratu is here, so I'm going to defer to her either now or when she wants. This is the question of what's going on at Western Connecticut State University. I drew this to the attention of the Finance Committee because the report from Western did not indicate that they were having a major financial crisis, although it did discuss the freezing of 79 full-time lines. And this had been reported, the financial situation, and one might call it a crisis, at Western, and the fact that the system office had contracted with the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, which is a Colorado-based outfit, which the system office has consulted with also on the questions of a special meeting that was held in November that discussed alternative models for consolidation of universities and community colleges. And we had a lengthy report from them and met with 2 of their consultants. We were supposed to have a second meeting, but that was canceled. So this is the same group. I've just received the report. And Ratua, are you there? Do you have a copy of that report?
Hi, Dave. Hi, David. The NCHEM report?
Yes, the NCHEM report.
Yes, yes, I do. Do you want?
Okay.
I don't know how to share it here.
Yes. So I haven't had a chance to look through it, but were you folks consulted on the preparation of that report?
Not at all. So the report, so NCHEM came here, I think it was around October last year, and that they interviewed about 20 individuals. None of them, well, they did interview the University Senate President, who is a librarian, but outside of that, they are in management, the ones who were interviewed, and a few deans, I think. So the report was submitted, at least it was submitted on the cover. It said January 3rd, 2022. It was revealed to us first at the University Planning and Budgeting Committee early April, and then a couple of days later in the same week at 2 open forums at Western. So it took a full 3 months.
Right.
And, yeah.
I understand you had a vote of non-confidence.
Yes.
Perhaps you can explain that.
Yes. So we after the open forums that revealed this report and the financial crisis, so we faculty, AUP faculty, so we had 2 town hall faculty meetings, and we decided that we needed to give John Clark, Western President, the vote of no confidence. And this is why we actually understood that Clark does not have much power. Most of the decision-making power is with the system office, the BOR. But he is the university president, and so the buck stops with him. So that's why we gave him a vote of no confidence. We understood that it had no power, but it was a statement. So that's why we held it. And actually, we're thinking also, we talked about this at a CSEA council meeting a couple of weeks ago. We are planning to hold also, so CSEA is planning to move, there's a resolution to support this vote of no confidence that was passed last month at the University Senate at Western. And we're going also to hold a vote of no confidence for the BOR.
Okay, thanks, and we'll follow that. I did ask Ben Barnes for a breakdown of the 79 full-time positions which are being not renewed, right? And this is the answer I got. Now, you may already have this, Rotua, but in any case, of the 73 positions for a total savings of 11.2 million. And I guess the expectation here is that these will not be searched for in fall of 2021, but are permanent or at least continuing non-replacements. For AAUP, that's the bulk of the non-refilled positions. That's 23 positions for 4.7 million. That's 42% of the total. Clerical are 8 at 1 million for 9%. Maintenance, about double that, almost 2 million for 18%. Management confidential, that's the lowest category, or second lowest. Lowest is police. That's less than $500,000. That's including fringe benefits. It's just a little bit over 4%, and the police as well at 4%. And then SWOF, which I take it would be administrative faculty and related faculty, would be another. That's the second largest group at almost 2.5 million or 22%. So that gives us an idea of what's going on there, and we'll certainly follow with interest any further developments at Western. The significance of this, of course, is for the other universities as well, because the original wedge issue leading to the Students First and proposed consolidations of the community colleges was the deficit at, if I remember correctly, 2 of the larger ones. Right? And now here we have 1 of 4 universities, and this has been known for a long time. This is not like a surprise that people just found out about now, that there has been a structural deficit and that Western is operating in the red, as it were, and has expended all of its reserves. I noted at a previous meeting of the FAC that the board had modified the formula by which it allocates funding per capita of students to include taking into account part-time students, which was positive, but also according to a formula which I haven't seen and I did ask for, according to which Central and Southern would, without any decrease in number of students, receive on average $1.5 million less. Eastern would receive approximately $100,000 more, and Western between $4 and $5 million more. So that's the situation at Western. The rest of this, and I'm going to skip most of it, is headcount stuff. You got to remember when we get the finance committee and when it gets to the executive level of the system as well, it's spreadsheet time, right? Just like at the ASA committee, it's those forms for alignment of programs. And so I have this, and I'll send it out to people because you might be interested in seeing it. But basically, if you look here, the head count, which includes every part-time student as one, for the universities is 22,000, and it's expected to decrease to 21,000. So it's a decrease. Their expectation is a decrease of 2%. For the community colleges, it's 34,000. That's a head count, but remember the bulk of those are part-time, and they're expecting an increase to 36,000, a 5.7% increase, which they explain as based on better advertisement of PACT so that more students switch from part-time to full-time or decide to attend community college when otherwise they wouldn't have. That's their expectation. And secondly, of course, guided pathways. So when we look at the FTE enrollment, obviously it's going to be lower numbers because you're not counting every part-time student as one. Nonetheless, for the universities, the total is 18.9 thousand. They're expecting 18.5, a 2% decrease. For the community colleges, 19,600 and an increase to 20,800. So that's a 6.1% increase, somewhat higher than the headcount increase because they think that proportionately a somewhat higher percentage will be actually full-time students. And that, of course, is the PACT issue. For Charter Oak, 766, declining to 741, and that's a decrease of 3.3%. I'll skip the graduate stuff. For some reason, I got all involved in these things, and I'll send it out as part of the minutes. But I think most of these are just breaking it down so that if you want to know, for example, by university, the FTEs, that's kind of interesting. Central is slightly the larger at 6,200 expected, and that's considered, they're expecting a flat enrollment for the coming year. Eastern is 3.3 thousand, expecting a 4% decrease. Southern, 5.4 thousand, a 5% decrease. And Western at 3.4 from 3.485, a small decrease of about approximately 0.5%. So overall, a 2.3% decrease, at least at the undergraduate level, and there's also considerations of graduate. And you have then also the FTE equivalents for the community colleges, which I find interesting because you can see exactly what is happening at each one of them. And generally speaking, the biggest increase, which is considerable actually, is expected at Naugatuck Valley. I'm not exactly sure why. A 10% increase, a 9% increase expected at Norwalk. So, Lois, you've been doing your job. And there's Charter Oak as well, which is a FTE of 1,500, a rather small number here at the graduate level. So even a decrease of 7 students is a huge decrease of 7%. But they're overall expecting a 1.6% or so decrease. Well, I'll make that available. And it's kind of interesting. I know, it's an acquired taste to look through spreadsheets, and there were nearly 100 pages of them. They certainly practice transparency, but of course the interesting things get lost in the woods, and so one has to look carefully for the trees that are significant. Are there any questions about the finance aspects? I think we need to follow, however, what's happening at
Other
West.
than the fact that it's pretty depressing.
It's a large amount of money. It's $1.3 billion. And I think, that is something to watch closely. Secondly, COVID policy for fall 2022. Again, I think it's our role to remind the Board of Regents that we need a policy. We did that in March of 2020 when they at least had not. Oh, Carmen, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sorry. You were talking about the FTEs and the PACT thing is my understanding. I'm not sure if this will change things, but my understanding is that now students can go part-time and get PACT as of July 1st. So in a way that's good for our community college students because a lot of students couldn't afford to go full-time and work full-time. But so I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. And Andre?
Yeah, those projections of growth, is there some narrative that they added along with that? I mean, normally that's what you'd like to do
Yeah,
in
no,
such reports.
the only narrative is at the community colleges, it'll be the success of PACT and the advising, the guided pathways.
Okay.
So that's a projection. I think, Andre, what you may be getting at is that's not based on actual data or results extrapolated from anything, because of course the guided pathways is only being now introduced. They have hired,
Yeah,
however, approximately 170 people.
yeah, no, but usually when you make a projection, especially if there's a significant change, you back it up with some kind of whatever planned changes or something, some kind of narrative. Otherwise, it's kind of,
Yeah, that's a problem at the finance committee meetings and at the board as well, because this will all go into the consent agenda. Very few people, in fact, there were only questions at the finance committee. Ari Santiago had a couple of questions, and he was quite concerned about number of students per faculty member in various programs and wanted details on that. There was also a question about the other figure. In some of the breakdowns of the budget, other could be up to $100 million. And Rich Balducci asked about that, and I think we'll get a further breakdown, although that includes things like police, maintenance, buildings, and so forth. And then I asked questions like, what about the 1% increase in the expenditures of the community colleges when this was supposed to be a cost-saving program? So yes, I think we'll come back and we'll ask for further detail on the justifications for these figures. But again, they are projections. And in the case of the guided pathways, it's based on no available data because it's something they claim but haven't yet begun, or have not begun in to the extent that they have with the hiring of over 170 people. COVID policy for fall 2022. I think we just need a small resolution here so that I can bring it up directly to the board for the next meeting. And that is my proposal, simply this: resolve that the BOR review and revise its COVID policy, including a mandate for boosters for fall 2022 in consultation with faculty and staff at all institutions and the FAC. It's just to put it on the agenda for the next board meeting, which is in 2 weeks. So this will give them plenty of time to consider whether we've, submitted it to the right people. I will submit it to a whole bunch of people because this is really quite important. And I know they have a working group there somewhere. Let's reactivate that and make sure that it is done in consultation with faculty and staff, as well as students, of course, and the FAC. So I'd like to just move that as a motion, or have someone move it as a motion. I'm chairing the meeting.
I'll move that, David.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
I'll second it.
Lois, thank you. Discussion? If not, I'll just call a vote. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's approved. The third item that I have is refugee policy for the next board meeting. And if I can find it here, you recall that we had a resolution at our, I have to just stop this for a second. Share again. And can I even find it? Possibly not.
I know it's on page 75 of the ASA agenda. Do you?
Yes. I'm just trying to Acrobat Pro. Do you see? Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this went to we had our resolution last time about extending tuition and fees and other considerations for refugees from the Ukraine conflict, right? It was specific to the Ukraine conflict. Now this went to the ASA committee, I think, right? And perhaps Melina, you can just say what happened there. It was reworked by the system office staff, extended to refugees in general, which I think is a good thing, actually, and moreover to those seeking asylum. And it was also specifically related to the two organizations in Connecticut which help in the resettlement, the refugee cash assistance and the refugee medical assistance. Actually, the staff report associated with this is quite good because it specifies who will be contacted and how this will be done in order to assist refugees and asylum seekers. Glinda, did you have something to add?
No, I just thought it really great that they really developed a procedure for actually doing this effectively, and that it'll sort of work both ways. So if people come directly to us, they may refer them to state services that they may need, and vice versa. In addition, I know that at ASA, there was a request to make sure that we track who makes use of this and to what extent it is effective, and report on that on a regular basis. So
yes, and that was included here at the bottom, that the CSU System Office will report to the ASA and the finance committees of the board in October 2022 and each fall thereafter on the results of this initiative. So I think that was a very good addition. And I had the distinct pleasure of congratulating the System Office and BOR staff on the preparation of this resolution. I think it's definitely positive. That's it for my report, unless I can think of something as we continue the meeting. Lena, over to you.
okay. Yeah, so again, this refugee and asylum policy came through ASA also. In addition, the very last set of aligned curricula in areas of study came to ASA. So Fran Rosselli Navarra's project of getting this all aligned is now complete. And the CCIC, I believe, has been disbanded because it has fulfilled its purpose. So from here on out, what is supposed to happen is that the shared governance structure of the consolidated college should be put into effect in the next academic year, and anything going forward will go through that structure. So I believe that CCIC has met for the last time, and this will be the last set of, dozens of programs and courses going through the process. Just to reflect on that for a second, I just want to say that what I would hope we might do now that all of that is done is that, usually when things go through ASA, there is also an assessment of capacity projections, these kinds of things that you were talking about, Andre, like, is this a viable program? What do we expect to get from it? And also, the extent to which any one of these programs could actually be offered at any given college, right? There has been no indication of that, and we have seen some loose talk. I think there might have been it wasn't an article, it was at one of the legislative hearings, there was a suggestion made, for example, that the consolidated college would make possible offering the nuclear program that is offered at Three Rivers across the state. And that is simply untrue. And I think it would be helpful to actually take an assessment of our capacity so that it will become clear to what extent any one of these programs is actually accessible at any part of the state. So I think it would be useful perhaps to encourage that. I expect that in preparing a report for the legislature and the board, that is something that I will encourage, because it will be very easy to think that things are much more accessible than they are. But in this whole process of getting things on paper for a catalog for the entire state, What we have not seen is investments in making programs more widely available across the state. So worth noting, I think. Any discussion or comments on that stuff in terms of the last of the curriculum before I move on to the next thing?
Just let me add, we had a presentation at the last board meeting, I think it was from Three Rivers, where the nuclear program is located. And also they have a submarine hull program. And I was quite interested in that because, as it turns out, many moons ago, I was involved in the production of those kinds of things. That said, so I knew about Groton way before I came here to Connecticut. That said, those are very specialized programs, and it requires hands-on. This is not something, if you want to build a submarine hull, I got to tell you, that's not something that you just read about in a book or watch on a screen. You have to have, if you're going to do the actual production, I think you're going to need to learn something about welding. If you're going to learn the controls for a nuclear reactor, I really don't want people who have only done it, online or remotely, looking after the reactors here in Connecticut. And that applies as well. We had the discussion last time about the biology labs. And whether that had to be hands-on or could be done, remotely, and that's what the students want, and for students first, that's what we should do. So these are issues that we need to follow closely because they just don't make sense. And so, when from the point of view of the system office, they have this principle of alignment, and one community college will offer everything everywhere, but we know that can't be the case, and they need to begin to recognize the reality of what they're doing and how this is going to function in the future, or else they're going to lose those programs.
See, Lois has a hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is about these programs being offered across the system. You all have noticed, I hope, that they are pushing online courses as much as possible, including science labs, against all research that proves that online science labs are not very good. The other thing is that I was told, now this is secondhand and I have to follow up on this, but I know I had a conversation with the program coordinator of one of our allied health programs earlier a few weeks ago, and she said that she was going through her outside accreditation process, and she was having to fight system office on a number of things. And then I heard from someone else, someone who teaches in that program the other day, last week, that she has now been told that she should, from now on, forego accreditation for that program. It wasn't necessary for her to have that program accredited, even though it's an allied health program. And I'm not sure where those students would be able to find jobs if they're not graduating from an accredited program. But that would seem to me that's something that is happening because our paralegal program has always been accredited by the ABA. They were told to stop their accreditation, and they have done so. So allied health programs, I guess, are next on the list. So it seems to me that's how they're going to be offering these programs across the system, because they're going to be online. The other thing I heard, and I have to say this is truly secondhand, so I'd have to please take it in that way, that the new president that we have has suggested that we should have a similar reputation to Southern New Hampshire University. I'll end my comments there.
Carmen?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, well, Lois, that stuff that you just mentioned is quite concerning. I was just wondering what you guys think about this. If they're trying to get more and more online classes, that the consolidation, I would just assume that if, there's an online bio lab at Manchester that has 10 students and another one of students that want to do online at Capitol, they may as well just combine them and just have one professor teach the 20 students, right? I mean, is that what we're thinking here? I mean, if anything, I'm trying to get some of my colleagues to kind of say, guys, listen, we got to put a stake in making sure these biology labs are on ground, because if there aren't, I'm just assuming the online labs can be taught by, you just start combining labs and bumping up the enrollment. What are your thoughts on this? Is that you're hearing that this is something that makes sense to me if I was coming from a standpoint of just trying to do things as fiscally as possible and could care less about what's best for the students?
That's exactly what they're going to do, Carmen.
Okay, that's why I need to talk to our department, who are still, some faculty are still trying to push for online labs. And I'm just kind of saying, listen, this is going to hurt your job here.
Yeah, I mean, remember that this entire consolidation is sort of a response to our chronic underfunding, right? And it's timed perfectly to capture a natural reduction in workforce when, with our silver tsunami, so to speak, right? Everybody's retiring. We've increased administrators, layers and layers of administrators. The only way that savings can possibly come is by packing classes and reducing faculty and staff. Like, that's the only possibility. So unless there is some other pathway towards actually increasing state investment in public education, which there absolutely should be, but I don't see that being the track that this system is taking, or I shouldn't, that's very unfair. I should say a sort of more radical, progressive, aspirational sort of, it shouldn't be more, it should be like of a completely different like measure, right? Then that has to be what happens. I mean, it just has to be. And, Lois, so this will take me into some other stuff that I was going to talk about. I might as well transition into now, because I'm disappointed to hear, even though you emphasize that it's very, very secondhand, that you heard Southern New Hampshire University from the new president, because what I was going to point out was that we have Malloy, who started this whole thing. He's in Maine right now. At last count, there were 4 votes of no confidence. Has he gotten any more? In that consolidation there, even though that consolidation seemed to be much better designed than ours. When Allison Buckley was the first person, enrollment management was the first role filled as in terms of the administrative structure of this consolidation. And I do remember, I was at her interview, and I remember that aspiration for, capturing students from other states through online instruction. And I found that a little alarming, but that was the direction that we were going in. But Allison Buckley is now leaving us for SUNY as of, I think it was officially announced maybe a day ago. So she will no longer be here. We know that the past chair of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee for the board also found Southern New Hampshire University to be a wonderful model, but she's no longer here. Our past provost is no longer here. In fact, the 3 people who wrote the article advertising the new college as some sort of anti-racist project are no longer here. So it's very much the case that the leadership of this big thing has turned over significantly. And I'd love to believe that with the new community college president, perhaps there's room for discussing a new direction, right? As we see all of these things changing. So I don't know, but I did not hear that. And I'd like to believe that maybe we could develop a conversation with the new leadership to at least see where he stands with this. Because the thing with the online labs also is just that it simply places our students at a disadvantage. Like, we know, for example, that UConn's not going to take them. So once again, we're doing things that are like at odds with our goals, right? We have a GAP program, which is guaranteed placement, with UConn, but we're offering courses that they just won't take. Sorry, I see Lois's hand again.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to be incredibly maybe cynical, but as far as I'm concerned, rather clear-eyed. This person, like Terrence Chang before him, was not hired to rock any boats. I don't see that happening at all. So I think there's some dreaming involved if anybody thinks that he's going to change course in any way. But that's my opinion, and I will keep it at that. But that's how I feel about it.
I think maybe the other thing to read, the more cynical thing to read, and I think maybe probably where my head actually is with all of this, is one that we've created a structure that is so large and so politically entrenched that it really doesn't matter who holds these roles at this point. The ship has a direction. There is no, everybody's a cog in a wheel. We're not necessarily, it's just impossible to go in another direction. And the way to understand the fact that this spreads out and is connected to, whether it's Maine, New York, the various other sort of connections through different consultants or initiatives across the country, is that public higher ed is going in a really unfortunate direction. And it is a sort of national fight to regain something that past generations could take for granted and we no longer can, right? I think that's where my head actually is, but I'm gonna say the other thing because, until I'm proven wrong. Yeah, David.
Yeah, the question of the proper relationship between on-ground classes and online classes at the community college level, at the university level, undergraduate and graduate, that's a complicated matter that really requires a lot of analysis and also, taking stock of what has actually happened here in Connecticut in the past, not merely, what we might hope to be like Southern New Hampshire, which is a very different organization. They have a completely separate online program, which is the one you see advertised on TV, completely separate from their on-ground and hybrid programs that they give to their own undergraduates and graduates. That said, I sat through many meetings in the old four-campus CSU system on online software and programming, and at that point, the ideal was to somehow compete with and emulate Western Governors University, which was one of the pioneers for online courses. And it didn't work. They set up online CSU and it failed, even though they put people in charge of marketing and et cetera. It was supposed to attract 80% of students from outside the state. It attracted 90% of students from inside the state, and largely our own students from the CSU or Connecticut residents who were attending a university out of state and came back for the summer and wanted to do something, even though online, locally. We haven't figured out the lessons from the failure or the closing of the CTDLC, the Connecticut Distance Learning Consortium. And so these are complicated matters. I mean, I'm not one to say, oh, we can't have any online offerings, but I did participate, for example, in an online group approximately 2 years ago, where it was proposed by outside consultants that the nursing programs at the community college go completely online. And we had to go and check with the university people to find out that they wouldn't accept that. And of course they wouldn't accept that. That was obvious. So they said, okay, let's do accounting. But that's not how you do these things, right? Our criticism, which often is something we understand amongst ourselves, but doesn't reach those who have who are making the decisions, is not that we want a blanket rejection of whatever it is that is being planned. There may be some functions which should be centrally or centralized, but not all. There should be some things that are done online, but not all. And figuring out what is the proper balance between these things is a matter of judgment, and not, we made a decision 5 years ago to do students first, and now we're going to do all the following things. Again, I return to my usual mantra about review and revise. We don't do that, and if they don't do that, it's not going to be successful. And it's a shame for us to say we told you so afterwards. We would like to actually, have the means of sitting down and figuring out, using sane and rational judgment and experience, not just from some random report from Texas or from Jersey or from New York or from Colorado or from wherever, but also based on the experience we've had here in Connecticut.
So, so following up also on this idea of national rot, and also like spreading nationally, and these failed online projects that you're talking about, David, I'll encourage you to look at the sort of saga of the University of Arizona's acquisition of Ashford University, which is a for-profit online university it acquired for $1 in 2020, which promptly had the function of a very inequitable result of basically subsidizing traditional, more financially stable students by basically overcharging non-traditional poorer students. And right now there's a bit of it seems like they're in even more crisis as they try to transition Ashford University into something else, which is Arizona Global Campus, which is an online initiative. And I will say again that the way I view it is that Connecticut is at the crux of this spreading trend. Ashford University is shared a board member with this system for a long time. So, these initiatives, right, are connected to us. What's going on in Arizona is very much connected to what is going on in Connecticut. And this goal of, this global online university is being tried here and there and everywhere. Okay, so let me see. I'm like cagey about what I want to say here because to me it's shameful that we should have on our board public higher education someone who is also on a for-profit university. To me, that suggests values that are out of alignment, but perhaps I'm wrong. Okay, so speaking of all of this, I mean, one of the issues with us, right, is that there's very little that we can do within the system to change course as long as the governor's office is behind our direction. And this started with Malloy, and Lamont has just simply not changed course. It's not clear that he is fully aware of exactly what's happening in the system, but we just continue to move forward. So we're at a moment, actually, did we announce, I don't know if we met since David Jimenez and Aviva Bubb left the board. I don't think so. So both David Jimenez and Aviva Bubb, both governor's appointees, are no longer part of the Board of Regents, which means that there are 2 governor appointee positions left to be filled. So the board is 9 positions appointed by the governor, and then 4 others appointed by House and Senate leaders, respectively. The House and Senate leadership, they have specific kinds of areas of expertise or personal history that they, must exhibit in order to be candidates for the board, but the governor can appoint anybody he wants. And it does seem to me to be a moment where we might want to signal like the sorts of people that we would like to see on the board, the sorts of commitments we would like to see on the board, the sorts of engagement, and that we could communicate that in some way. So certainly, if this is something that you agree with, it can find its way into our report again, this half-yearly report. But also, I don't know if there's anything folks want to say about what precisely it is that we might want to ask for as the governor considers these two positions on the board.
If you have any suggestions of names, why don't you send them to Kalina and me?
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people out there, including retirees, who have a lot of university and community college experience, and who would be therefore positive additions to the board, whether they entirely agree with us or not. That's I don't think that's the criteria. The criteria should be to bring another perspective or a more informed perspective to the board.
How about Dr. Addy from Tunxus?
Yeah, Catherine Addy, Tunxus president. She would be superb.
Okay, well, do send the names to Kalina and me, and we'll look after forward them as best we can.
The other thing is somebody also that is can do some analysis, because a lot of this stuff is based on what shall I call it, voodoo economics or something like that. We need to have somebody that can actually analyze all that crap and publish the conclusions or observations about it, because I mean, somebody with half a brain and a calculator.
Well, Andre, I think there was a point earlier in this year where there were two completely conflicting sets of projections, one presented to the legislature and one presented to the board, right? So it really is voodoo. Is that correct, David? I'm not sure if I I don't want to misrepresent, but I believe that is something that we noticed.
Yeah, the whole question here is the relationship between analysis and projection. And if the projection is based on wishful thinking, or that it's been a promise or a premise of students first, that's not really the basis for a projection. And that was the point about guided pathways. Right. That was supposed to be done on a pilot basis, and projections then could have been done based on that data. Instead, when the HIRF money became available, all of a sudden 174 people were getting hired with no basis for paying them past FY23. That's just one example of it. So yeah, of the two people who have no longer on the board, Aviva Budd's term ended, right? And so she did not, I guess, request a renewal, whereas David Jimenez resigned, and that was related, I believe, to the failure of his strategy for negotiations. But that's a conjecture on my part.
And right in line with this wishful thinking projections thing, that brings me to the next thing that I wanted to mention, because part of the discussion at ASA was just noting what I know that we all already are aware of, that we've had so much discussion about ACME with folks at System Office, and I think we sort of settled down a little and backed off with the urgency, because we were told that it might be implemented as late as 2025, and that there would be a period for collection of data and modification as necessary, sort of phasing it in a safe way. We were recently informed, right, that it would be brought to scale in fall of 2023, which kind of took us all by surprise. And I think something that's interesting, I know that in introducing all of this, Tennessee's data was very much part of the projections. If you look at documents from 2018, you know, this whole emphasis, for example, ACME, the emphasis on gateway English and math courses, first college level English and math courses. The only reason that we've put so much focus into revamping them and then coming up with these modifications is that they had been understood as success in those courses had been understood as indicators of success in college level courses in terms of retention, in terms of success in future courses, in terms of graduation, etc., right? Persistence, etc. Well, February of 2022, Tennessee reports that while the co-requisite, and so here I'm talking about co-requisite remediation, not what we have in Connecticut, which is not co-requisite, but even still, co-requisite remediation actually, in fact, does lead to an increase in first-year completion of math and English, but first-year completion of math and English is no longer an indicator of persistence, of graduation, because, of course, because you've changed the measure, right? Obviously. Okay, so now it's been documented. I did note this. So again, this is the Tennessee data on actual co-requisite remediation. Connecticut's plan does not quite rise to the level of co-requisite remediation. However, in bringing that up at ASA, the response was that our approach to it better suits it, or is better matched to California's plan than to Tennessee's plan. And before I followed up with that, I just thought I would introduce that here and see if anybody has any thoughts on that, or any further information. I know only one thing about California, and it is that when they did their reforms, it came with funding to implement those reforms. And that in itself is a huge difference from what we are doing. But in terms of course design, I figured I'd want to hear from folks who are more familiar than I am, and then I'll certainly look into it and ask for, you know, the examples of California so that we can dig into it a little further. But does anybody else have any feedback, any information, any, I know Jen is not able to be here. She had a little emergency, so unfortunately, she can't weigh in on this, but is anyone aware of the sort of justifications behind speeding this up?
Nope.
I mean, if we don't know, I will look into what sorts of stuff. Mary Beth, good. I was hoping to hear from you.
Well, I don't know how much you should be hoping to hear from me. All I'm just reporting is that the last information that I was given at the last CMAC meeting that I was able to attend was the idea that we had, you know, until 2025. We sort of talked at that meeting about potentially maybe trying to start in 2024. So that way, if changes need to be made, we still have 2025 until 2025 if updates to be made. And then the next thing I knew, it was 2023. So I have nothing to share other than I don't know anything else. But I just wanted to let you know that I wasn't informed, or math people that I'm aware of weren't informed as well.
That was the feeling I got, right? There was lots of hand waving towards individual faculty members who were involved in the decision and willing to defend it. But what I understand is that the discipline groups that should have been involved in that were not made aware. And I would really like to see the data or the whatever justification led to this. So I will ask for it if none of us is more informed than I am.
Yeah, and one other thing that I will just share that I think was very shocking at that meeting, and I think it sort of goes to this decision that we're launching in 2023, is that we were told at that meeting, and I think really for many of us, it was the first time that we had heard that, that there was no option to pilot at all this program. So I think some people had talked about, well, maybe it would be good if we started in 2023, maybe some schools could offer it, or maybe all the schools could offer like one section of the co-requisite, but still have the other courses available, because then you have data that you can collect, et cetera, et cetera. And we were told that it was an equity issue and therefore it could not be piloted. It had to just go all or nothing. And so that could have played into the idea of, well, then we might as well just start it in 2023 because we're not really gaining much by waiting. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So that's where I'm at.
I'm sorry, I just got a little bit upset about equity has become this bizarre thing that I think has become synonymous with blanket equality. Everybody gets the exact same thing, which is not what it means, which you illustrate so well, Mary Beth. So I'm not, I know you're as frustrated as I am. I just, goodness, how did this happen? David, sorry. And I see you, Lilith.
Yeah, I mean, there is data available and analysis available within the system that they don't know about and aren't taking advantage of. And I'll just give you one example if I can share the screen here. And it is, well, I'm going to stop it. We have a little internal publication called Systematic Reflections that's begun at CCSU by our Teaching and Learning Committee. And there is in this issue, a 20-page paper, Grouping and Regrouping Developmental Math and Higher Education by Marian Anton and Karen Santoro, who are two faculty members in our developmental group. And they have statistics. I have met with them. I've met in particular with Marian, who has the statistics, which apparently the system office doesn't know about or isn't interested in. I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt and say they don't know about it. But there are people at the universities. That's their job, to figure out what are the developmental problems of students coming to us from high school and as well from the community colleges. And they have done a lot of work. This is a particularly interesting article. I'll send it along to those of you who are interested. But it's just one example of failing, to see what's happening here because we're so interested in supposedly some successful plan from somewhere else.
And there are so many professionals in the community college system who have done this for decades and are and have produced thorough reports and who have been requesting, for example, an expansion of offerings in ALP for years, which is a prerequisite model, and they're not being listened to. I'll leave it to you, David, to call on. There's a number of hands.
Okay, Andre, then Mary Beth, then Lois.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to suggest that you send it to all of us, this report, and any similar reports, because to me, this is one of the most important issues in this whole saga, if you will. And if they are using equity as a way of justifying their actions, the problem is it's going to have exactly the opposite result.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm concerned, this is a racist policy that they want to implement. I don't know. I spent 2 years at Gateway, which was a community college, inner city community college, and I know how important the developmental programs were. And kids were coming in motivated as hell, and they demanded that we, in fact, rework what they lost or didn't get in high schools. So I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
I'll show
Please
you.
send that out to everybody because this is a key, most important thing.
I think I've got it on screen here. Grouping and regrouping developmental math and higher ed. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And it goes on. And do you want to have, various methods, various They're looking at different methods. Here you've got some stats. At Central, they've gone from Math 099, which was a more or less unsuccessful class for those students who failed the incoming math test, to Math 101, to now replacing that with Math 102 and 103. They've been quite successful, and they've got something going here. But they're not being taken into account, and that's a problem.
Yeah, please send it out.
Hey, I'll send it to everyone. And there's many more like this. I'm sure at Southern and at Eastern and Western and at the community college level.
Please send them out.
Okay. Mary Beth?
I just wanted to make sure I made clear that, many math faculty, including myself, think there's great hope for some of the co-requisite parts if they become true co-requisites. There are going to be benefits to students, so there are some good things. But I just wanted to make sure that was out there, so it's we're not. The whole thing isn't negative. There are going to be some good things, but obviously there are concerns, significant ones.
Okay, Lois, and then Ron.
I just want to clarify that there are actually about more than 50% of the California community colleges have refused to drop remedial courses. They're still putting students into remedial courses. So it might be worth our while to contact those colleges and find out what's behind what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Okay, Ron?
Thank you, David. It's Associate Dean of Institutional Effectiveness at Naugatuck Valley. I had a research team dedicated to PA 1240 research, documenting what changes we were making, including ALP, ALP for English and AMP for math, true co-requisite models. I teach a co-requisite model. I've taught it for years now. We produced every year, we produced 40+ page report on success rates. And more importantly, we adjusted the courses and we adjusted how they were being delivered and what we were doing every year based upon the results of our research. I offered to early on, years ago, I offered to share this document. I actually did share it. I sent it to the system office and don't know what happened to it. As far as I know, nobody ever looked at it, but it's 40 something pages worth of statistical analysis, and it's we were really proud of the work that we did on it. It's sad that we have in-house experts who have done a great deal of research on this and have been ignored for the last 4 years. It's pretty pathetic, actually. It just shows how much respect or lack thereof that the people leading these efforts have for faculty, for their colleagues here in the system.
Okay, Andre, did you have your hand up again, or was that from before?
Yes. The thing is that I agree with Mary Beth that it's not that this is something that cannot work or shouldn't be implemented. The problem is that what they're talking about is just totally doing away with developmental courses. And the point is there are students who, in fact, are not going to succeed without them. And if they're working full time, they don't, co-requisites aren't going to help them. So again, it's the radicalism of the proposal that's the problem. Okay, it's not the idea itself of having co-requisites. I mean, again, of course it could work, and I agree with Mary Beth, and I'd like to have the copy of that report as well, if I can. Okay, I'd be interested to read that.
Okay, Mary Beth?
Sorry. No, I'll put my hand down now. Didn't mean to.
Okay. All right, back to you, Kalina. I think everybody who had their hand up has now spoken.
Okay, so just two more really quick things. There was another vote of no confidence in the system, this one at my college, Gateway. I think I've shared with you all the document just today, though. that sort of details there was a report that led to that no confidence vote. And I think, you can look through it. There are some things that are very specific to Gateway and some things that needed some attention. But I do think that there are some things that might echo something broader, because I think part of what's going on at Gateway and potentially elsewhere is, back to what we were talking about with, new president, what does that mean? There is so little, structurally, there's so little room for individual direction and leadership, right? Certainly at our colleges, where a CEO answers to a regional president, who answers to a community college president, who answers to assistant president, right? Who then has to deal with the governor. So there's a lot going on. I just want to read to you certain portions that might echo the feeling at a lot of our community colleges, if I'm correct. Let me see. So we had a 30th anniversary of Gateway coming up. And there was emphasis that the widely held feeling within the college community is not one of celebration, but rather of grief, mourning the institution of higher learning that we once were and never will be again. The failure to perceive, note, and address this grief and the push to celebrate was seen as an example of an administration's dismissal of morale at the college. Gateway is to a great extent not a college that is celebrating itself, and the emphasis of acting as though we were seen as insensitive and disrespectful. Another is this, the college is operating in an atmosphere of uncertainty, confusion, and fear. Faculty and staff feel disempowered to participate in decision-making and afraid that voicing individual concerns will jeopardize their already precarious and uncertain positions within the college, right? It is unknown how many additional concerns were not reported to the committee because faculty and staff do not feel safe in doing so. And I want to say that I think is not something that is unique to our college and our leadership. A lot of that lack of safety has to do with, the shift in, one of the things that was noted here was staff being reclassified in ways that impacted their future employment, that changed the trajectories of their career, right? That is not an individual decision. Some people don't appear on the org chart. So how much commitment are you going to get from them? So there's going to be more and more turnover of staff where people are looking for stable employment, right? And we're losing talent in that turnover, et cetera. So just wanted to share that with you because, again, the problem is systemic. It's in a large part systemic. There may be some personal aspects of it or specific aspects of it, but it is a lot of what needs to be addressed maybe outside of the scope of control of a college CEO. And I guess that has yet to be determined, but it appears to me as if it may be. Brendan?
Hi, Kalina. Thanks for sending that report. I noted the opening material on concerns over promotion and tenure, and I just wanted to mention that there are also concerns over promotion and tenure processes at Eastern. In fact, I believe there's going to be a grievance from the union about how the process unfolded. So I will circulate that document at Eastern as well, because as you said, it is systemic. There are serious concerns with sort of anomalies with how P&T worked at Eastern this year that we had never seen before. So thank you.
Okay, so one last thing before we're done is just that we keep forgetting to add to the agenda an item about the shared governance award that we had some discussion and decided to participate in that process this year. And the award was given to Three Rivers, but we never really, I think we were hesitant. We were like, is this going to be a great opportunity for us to engage with board members? How did that play out? I don't know that we had a chance to talk about it here yet. Am I correct that we haven't? So I know, both Fran and Mike are here. So could you just give us a little bit of information about how that went and how fruitful you think it was?
Yeah, I can start. So Mike reached out to, I'm not sure who you emailed, Mike, but we had a meeting. It was several of us, Mike Shea, myself, Holly Howery was there, Ira Bloom, Ken Kluchnik, and Fran Rosselli. I believe that was the group, to talk about some concerns. One concern is that this has not really been advertised. So a lot of people don't know what this is, and they really haven't been encouraged to forward nominations. So that was one concern we raised. Another concern is the trust issue. A lot of people, including me, really don't trust that anything now coming from system office isn't just a way to demonstrate to the legislature and to the world that we're all one big happy family and faculty are participating in some system that they're happy with. So we were listened to. Whether anything is going to change, I'm not sure. I mean, the more specific concern is it really fair to call this some sort of contest when there was one submission? I mean, there was no choice to be had here. It's either we were going to give the award to Three Rivers or not give it at all. So we were listened to, but the question is, to what extent do we want to support this process going forward? I don't know. I don't know what we want to do with it.
Yeah, I would just add, everything Fran said is right. I would just add to it that Ira Bloom and who was the other board member? Fran?
Holly Howery was there.
Yeah, Ira Bloom, they seem to be eager to want to meet more, one-on-one at least, or group, they seem to think that conversations between board members and faculty are worth having. Whether that would mean inviting them to something, either those board members or other board members, or more having informal conversations. But yeah, I would say it was a conversation. It was it was definitely back and forth. I think we heard each other. I think Fran's right. It's a question of whether something will happen or not is another story. But they did seem to like the idea of having that conversation that we had. They were not reluctant to do it all. They were kind of excited to do, and said we should do this kind of thing more. So there's that. Yeah. So, but I think they even understood that we have a real trust issue. They got it. I don't know what they would fix about it or anything, but I mean, they didn't dismiss the fact that faculty, have, that there's a kind of a general bad connection between or between faculty and the board, or faculty and the system office. Right? Wouldn't you say, Fran? They kind of acknowledged that, didn't dismiss it as, well, it's a problem on your end. I think they kind of agreed that it was a problem on both sides.
Yeah, without coming out and stating it, but that was my impression. And to be sure, this is a real low stakes issue in the big scheme of things. Obviously, this was a pretty easy meeting where we weren't going to be taking out the knives immediately, because it's not that big an issue. But again, the question is, to what extent is this relationship going to change? They have the power, we have none, and they know that also. So they can make concessions in this area that would be a pretty easy thing to do. So I think one thing Ken suggested is rewriting the guidelines for submissions, because some of those are kind of vague. You know, there's some indication one has to demonstrate the effectiveness of shared governance. And I don't know how one does that exactly, but that's difficult. So there, Ken was willing to do that. Actually, to suggest FAC do that, if I remember. But yeah, the bigger issue is, yeah, are they going to actually genuinely invite faculty and staff to participate in shared governance? That's a real big question. There's no indication to this point they're interested in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, so the award was initially an FAC initiative, right? It was brought up by the FAC, and that idea of both revising it and I think maybe putting, we shouldn't have a process where one institution could submit and therefore win it, because that seems to suggest that there is broader shared governance, right? So maybe there's work we could do. The other option is to simply let it die, because I mean, we'll have a single community college with so many layers of management soon. Who knows? That said, the conversation is fruitful, right? It can be fruitful. The connections can be fruitful. So I guess we should talk about whether we want to make some revisions to the shared governance award process.
Yeah, and that would be the reason I do it. Whatever we think of the award and the future of it is, you know, clearly Howery and Bloom, and maybe Ken and Fran too, are more comfortable meeting with a couple of us than coming to FAC, where they're going to be on the defense right away.
Right.
So, you know, again, what those conversations will actually lead to concretely, we don't know, but it's worth keeping those lines of communication open.
And you know, we can't underestimate the sort of it is difficult to do what is required of the board, especially when you consider the volume of stuff that has been coming through there lately, but even just in general, right? Those agendas for the ASA are hundreds of pages long. And you see these connections, right? So I'm thinking about Holly. Anytime something with technology comes up, you know, sometimes we say, oh, board members are disengaged. But no, when there are areas that are within their experience, they're very engaged, you know, very participatory. So, you know, we really need to do more to inform, to give them that confidence so that they can be engaged in that way. So yeah, we'll have to reach out and invite them to some stuff.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think Fran is right about the idea that it probably wouldn't work to come to an FAC meeting, but I do think that at least those two, and maybe one or two others that they would speak to, would be willing to meet with, I mean, it was great that they met with us, but to meet with Colleen and David. And I think in a smaller venue, you both have a very, even though there's this mistrust and we all feel a bit of anger, I think in a smaller venue, it'd be more likely to be a productive conversation where they might hear some of the concerns about even the ACME thing, the remediation stuff we were just talking about. I think when they're in a larger group, they kind of have to defend I just think it might be worth it. And I think Fran and I would be willing to join if you wanted, since we already had a meeting, but I'd also be willing not to be there. But I think, you know, at least those two probably would be willing to meet with, you know, Colleen and David, and probably have a decent discussion.
Yeah,
and the worst that would happen is we wouldn't. And so we find that out again. But they were newer members, and they seemed open to understanding that faculty have a perspective that they don't have and they don't get, they don't know.
Ira's an experienced educator, right? So there's that also, right? And he's now chair of ASA, so that's, you know, that's great.
But I would keep it small, and I remember after that meeting thinking, oh, Fran and I should suggest to David and Colina to try to meet with those two. And if it goes nowhere, it goes nowhere, but it might be a first step toward some sort of communication where we can restore some more, not trust, that's going to take a while, but just getting a foot in the door for them to sort of listen to our real concerns rather than just see it as whining or complaining.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can certainly take that into consideration and see what we can organize.
All right. Well, good. And that's it for me, David.
Okay. We had the fall FAC 2022 conference. Do we have anything further to say about that? I mean, one of the things that we could do at that point is come back on this shared governance issue, because, you know, the definition of shared governance is very variable, right? What we mean by it and what deans mean by it and what presidents mean by it and what board members mean by it may be, in fact, rather different things. And I think that's, you know, there are areas where we faculty predominate. That's curriculum and pedagogy, and that's of course being shunted to a side. There are areas where administration predominate. That's a budget and resources. And so we have to figure out, you know, where are things 50-50? For example, strategic planning. Where are things 90-10? That's curriculum and pedagogy, in my view. And on their view, budget and resources. I mean, you know, we get to see a 92-page spreadsheet, but I mean, there's nothing we can really do about that very much. We can sort of look at and see what are some of the issues that might be illustrated. So I think that's one possibility. And so we can always come back to this. I mean, there's no rush on this for the next meeting. But that's a suggestion.
Not be able to receive any new messages until you erase some of your existing messages.
Somebody has their mic on. If not other issues, we're actually approaching the end of this meeting. I just want to mention, I forgot to mention in my report that I have a little piece in the Connecticut Mirror today, which they titled, because I guess they know my views on the matter, Failure of Students First. That's not what the title I'd given. It was Over-Centralization and Delocalization, Students First as a Flawed Plan. And I do try to propose in that the system of systems model, because we hear a lot about the system, and that's another issue that's quite confused. What is a system? Is a system that the system office controls what goes on down to the way in which you deliver your classes in each and every discipline? What does it mean for the university to be a system, or a community college for that matter, in terms of its autonomy and integrity? So I do try to bring up those issues very briefly within the canvas of 1,000 words, and with some references to the folks who developed systems of systems, namely the U.S. military. They've been quite successful in applying it. I do note that, you know, success also has to take into consideration the justification of the action in the first place. But nonetheless, big business, especially in technology, the military, particularly in this country, have been using very successfully a system of systems approach, which allows for coordination of diverse systems without infringing upon the autonomy and integrity of those systems. Because what is happening is when you over-centralize, you lose the initiative at the local level, right? And, you know, if I was going to use a military analogy a bit more, I'd say, look at what's happening to the Russian forces in Ukraine. That's a centralized command system. It don't work. So I do recommend that you take a look at it, and I will send along a list of the other articles which have appeared in the Connecticut Mirror by Christine Japley. There was one recently in May 25th, which was an excellent critique of a number of misconceptions that are involved in Students First. And there are ones going back further than that. A really nice one from Brendan Cunningham that goes back to August of 2021. So I will circulate that around as well. And I think, you know, I recommend that people take advantage of the viewpoints in the Connecticut Mirror. You know, so long as you can sort of package it in 1,000 words, you have a good chance of getting your point of view expressed. They are really serious about trying to get as many opinions as they can. So that's just one point I wanted to add. Are there other issues, other matters that we have to discuss?
David, I just want to mention something. This is Carmen, and
Carmen.
one of the things I think it would be nice is if people who are FAC members at their colleges, what I'm trying to do is send out the minutes that, thank you, Lois, that you're to the whole college, but then also it's also kind of a nice way to kind of send out these articles that you're talking about, because I can say these articles were mentioned at the FAC meeting. And it was just basically, I'm a conduit as an FAC member to the college, because otherwise I feel like I get some pressure from our college president. We can still send things out, but I do feel like if we could all do this and send this stuff out to our college members saying, this is FAC, the stuff that we talked about, these are the minutes. It's harder for our president to come and say, you know, that's not appropriate to use of that email. So just a recommendation because we can all look at these articles. I look at all the CT articles, but it's better that the whole college community gets that also. And again, only a fraction of them read it, but at least that everyone gets it. So that's it.
That's a good suggestion. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to be clear what Carmen was, are you suggesting that we distribute our minutes, the FAC minutes to the universities, or at least to the governing bodies? Is that what you were saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been sending the minutes out to our whole college community. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then also with a little bit about what the role of the FAC. Yeah.
Okay. And you send them after we voted on them, obviously. I mean,
right. Yeah. So I will send out the May minutes. Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
That is a really good idea. I can't believe I haven't.
Yeah, because we need to get more and more faculty and staff on board with what's going on. So anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other matters?
I'd just like to point out, so Fran had said that this will be his last meeting with us. Is that correct? As of the official representative from Tunxus?
Yes, I am resigning. I think you know the reasons why, all of you, as a state employee from full-time service. So I believe our bylaws require the FAC representative to be full-time, so I can't continue. Andre Plashinsky is here today as an observer, and he's going to be taking my place. So you will be in very, very good hands. Andre is a long time, both a faculty member in the system and just a tremendous guy and a tremendous resource. So you will be in very good hands, and Tunxus will be well represented.
I just want to take a minute to say that, Fran, I am so sorry that you're no longer going to be a full-time colleague with me. I mean, you've been like an orienting point for me for the time that I've been here, and I just want to take a minute to say how much I've really appreciated. I really, really appreciated that. Both your like fighting spirit and your common sense. So I know that we will be seeing each other still. Yes. I know that. Yes. But I hope that you might also be willing to continue as emeritus, and if so, we can introduce that so we can talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at the committee service. I'm not going to disappear.
Well, again, I see a number of people applauding, and we do really appreciate. When I came onto the FAC, you were one of the persons who was, a veteran already here, and so I was really happy to have your participation, which has been consistent and persistent. I imagine that's something that they've noted at your college as well, the persistence.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
So and I'm sure they've appropriately congratulated you.
Oh yeah, that too.
So that said, yes, we will have a motion at our next meeting for emeritus status, and perhaps one of the things that you can continue with us is to help, for example, with the FAC conference.
Yes, anything I can do
that you have would be invaluable to us.
Thank you.
Andre, welcome aboard. You've already participated in the meeting, so in fact, what Fran said seems to be quite true.
Oh,
So thank you again. Are there any other matters? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mike?
David, when is our next meeting? In July?
Yes, well, we meet all the time.
No, I know. July.
The board doesn't meet during the summer, although they're having one more meeting. They're having a June meeting, but they don't meet in July and August, but we do.
But we do have a July meeting and then a late August meeting. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yep.
Let me get the,
July 15th and August 19th.
Thank you. I may be in Europe on July 15th, so I might not make that one, but I'll send a note.
Oh, you're going to miss out so much. I feel so bad for you.
Yeah,
you can always cancel your trip to Europe.
that's true. We could. We might because of COVID. Who knows? Okay.
That said, thanks. Okay, Mike, so you've made a motion to adjourn as well?
Yes.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mike seems to be one. Mike and Kalina seem to be both in
Aye.
favor.
Aye.
I hear more.
I need a second.
Aye.
Yes, so David Stoloff is second. So I'm going to stop the recording. The meeting is adjourned until our next meeting in July. Thank you all for your attendance. But you can continue to talk informally if you wish. I'm just going to stop the recording now.
Fran, I just want to say